Hello, YouTube and Kick Worlds. Hello. So, I don't really want to do this live stream, but I have to. Yeah, and it's even worse that I'm doing it on a Friday night. Oh my god. But, there's some serious news and current events, politics that needs to be discussed. That's plural, so I should say need to be discussed. Okay, so Canada, in case people don't know, has a new Prime Minister. And I'm just going to show you an article from CBC of all sources discussing it. So Canada's new Prime Minister is Mark Carney. Okay. Mark Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada as of today. Either today, Friday, or maybe he might have been sworn in as Prime Minister yesterday, Thursday. Whatever the case, he is the current Prime Minister right now as I speak of Canada. And here's the CBC article, one of them about this news. Mark Carney could be Canada's shortest serving Prime Minister. Well, hopefully. Mark Carney was sworn in as Canada's Prime Minister on Friday. Okay, there we go, today. And depending on the outcome of the next election, he could be the country's shortest serving leader. Former Prime Minister Charles Tupper currently holds that distinction, serving in the role for just 69 days. In 1896, given that Carney is expected to call an election before March 24th, the day Parliament is set to return, it's possible that he could have a shorter time in office than Tupper if the Liberals lose the next federal vote. Well, let's hope that happens. Federal campaigns must be between 37 and 51 days in length, according to Canada's election rules, and the election day must fall on a Monday, with a few exceptions. An election call within the next few weeks would put voting day in late April or early May, depending on what day the writ drops and the length of the campaign. Sources speaking to CBC News have pegged April 28th and May 5th as two likely possible election days. That would mean Carney would have between 46 and 52 days as Prime Minister before the vote. And what did they say the other guy was there for? Okay, I didn't. Recent polls have shown a resurgence in Liberal support in the past few weeks. What's going on? But CBC's poll tracker still suggests that a Conservative victory is the most likely outcome. But even if the Liberals lose, Carney wouldn't stop being Prime Minister right away. There would be a transition period. Carney himself was sworn into office in record time, but typically transition can take a few weeks. Justin Trudeau was sworn into office 16 days after winning the 2015 election, and Stephen Harper was sworn in 14 days after the 2006 vote. Jean Chrétien was sworn in within 10 days of winning the 1993 election. If the election is on the later date of May 5th, a transition period of 16 days would give the Liberal leader a total of 68 days in the Prime Minister's chair, one short of Tupper. Well, isn't this an interesting little article? This is what CBC has to say about it. Really, this is what CBC has to say. Notice it's got a lot of thumbs up. We don't get to see the thumbs down. That's censored, I believe. And there's no comments being allowed on this important news. There's a strike right through the comments section, meaning the comments are not allowed. Wow. I would think that CBC, if they were, not part of the Liberal propaganda machine, but if they were actually fulfilling their mandate, which is to, facilitate a discussion about current events in Canada on Canadian issues to the benefit public interest of the Canadian public, then I would think that rather than point to this kind of trivia silliness, that they would talk about more serious matters, like the fact that Mark Carney is prime minister and he has not even been elected, or and has actually never held any political office, never been elected in any capacity, and is not even not even an MP. Like, he doesn't have a seat in Parliament. Yet he is the prime minister, legally speaking, and so that reveal, to my mind, and I believe to most people's minds, that would reveal that Canada has a very serious lack of democracy in our current system. That somebody could become prime minister without ever facing a vote. That is very disturbing and a very serious lack of democracy deficit, as I'm calling it. So, I mean, when a political leader, a leader of a country, major country, Canada is a major country, holds office without being elected, without facing the scrutiny of the people, that person lacks legitimacy. They may, legally speaking, be the leader of the country, but they lack a certain political legitimacy when they've never passed the test of an election. Okay, and so it's interesting that CBC is drawing all these historical comparisons about the short-serving prime ministers. I believe this is propaganda. I mean, there's nothing in this article that is factually incorrect. No, it's all true, I'm sure. But it's framing Mark Carney, as just another prime minister, right? Like, how many different Canadian prime ministers were mentioned in this short article? We had Tupper from the 1800s, mention of that prime minister. We had a reference to Justin Trudeau, Stephen Harper, and Jean Chrétien. So there were 4 prime ministers being discussed in this article, in addition to Mark Carney. Mark Carney would be the 5th. And so it has the rhetorical effect of framing Mark Carney as just one of that pack, right? There's 5 prime ministers' names dropped in this article, and Mark Carney's name is one of them. Yeah, but the other 4 prime ministers all faced elections and therefore held a certain amount of legitimacy as prime ministers, whereas this one, Mark Carney, has the distinction among these 5 of not having done that, right? So it makes your mind put Mark Carney in the same category as those other prime ministers, when really he's not. He belongs in a separate category in many ways, because he's different from them in the sense that they all were elected, he hasn't been. So this is propaganda. They're trying to frame the issue. They're trying to avoid any discussion of the obvious, that he lacks political legitimacy. Okay, so how did this all happen? Well, Justin Trudeau has fallen out of favor with the public and basically has been forced to resign as prime minister. So he still is a sitting MP, okay? He's still a member of parliament for the riding that he represents in Montreal, I believe. And so he is still there, right? He's just not the prime minister, and he's no longer the leader of the Liberal Party. And so the Liberal Party, did they have a leadership convention? I actually did not follow this news closely. I know that Chrystia Freeland was in the running to replace Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. And Mark Carney was another one. Now, did they actually have a party convention and where party members were voting on who they wanted to be the next leader? I don't know. I don't know if that happened. I don't remember seeing any news about that. So somehow I think that didn't happen. I think that Chrystia Freeland just dropped out of the race because it became apparent that she was not going to be very popular. And so then Mark Carney, were those the only two? Several others dropped. Yeah, there was news about several other Liberals contenders dropping out of the race as well. They were probably pressured to do so. So basically, everybody dropped out of the race who was running to replace Trudeau, and so then Mark Carney, but by default, because he did not drop out, becomes the leader. But whether that happened that way or not, even if there was a vote at a part, that's not a vote open to the public. That would be a party convention, only for members of the Liberal Party, voting on who they want to be the next leader of their party, right? So that's not the same thing as a general election for the public to decide on who's going to be the next leader of the country. But I don't think even that happened. I think that all the competitors all just dropped out, so they didn't even need to do the party convention thing. Don't quote me on that. I don't know that for sure. Like I said, I haven't been following these events closely, but I think that's what happened. Either way, though, it's a democracy deficit, because either way, it means that Mark Carney, the leader of the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister of Canada now, whether there was a party convention or not, it still means that the general public did not get a chance to vote on him being the Prime Minister. And I just think it's disgusting, because, like I say, he has no political legitimacy, and I mean, he has no. I don't think it would even help very much, but it would help a little bit if he had some background in politics. Like, it's not just that he's not been elected now for the role he's in now. He's never been elected. Like, he's never held public office. He's never just been an ordinary MP or nothing like that. He's never been a mayor. He's never held any kind of elected position in his life. Okay? So he's never passed that scrutiny from the public that happens when there's an election. Never. Not just in his current role, but never has he ever faced that. He's come in through the back door. And he is most well known for being the former governor of the Bank of Canada. And so, we don't need to be on this screen right now. Let's go back to... He's the former governor of the Bank of Canada. And when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, during those years. And of course, that was the time when Canada was in a race to the bottom for interest rates with financial policy. Mark Carney slashed interest rates to zero or near zero. And so that's what is called ZIRP, Z-I-R-P, zero interest rate policy of the Central Bank of Canada, which basically made money flow freely from banks to those who wanted to invest in assets like real estate. And so all this money at low interest flowing into real estate, of course, that pumped up the prices of real estate and led to the housing crisis that Canada is currently experiencing to a very severe degree. I mean, it used to just be that housing crisis was limited to Vancouver, maybe Toronto. Now it's every part of Canada. So we've got Mark Carney to thank for that, in large part. In large part. Of course, it's not only interest rates are not the only factor. I've discussed many times before how the issue of foreign ownership. Okay? So people, especially from China, buying up Canadian real estate, and with no intention of living in said real estate, they're simply buying it as an investment or in some cases to launder money, and to smuggle money out of China around capital controls, things like that. And that was a major issue in BC, leading to a public inquiry. And for many years, while this practice was going on, you couldn't even talk about it because you'd be called racist. Okay, never mind the fact that this was contributing greatly to the housing crisis in Vancouver, which severely harms people who do live in Vancouver and work in Vancouver of all races, like everyone. It doesn't matter what race they are. Everyone in Vancouver would be harmed by that type of practice. So, which would, Vancouver is not an all-white city by any means. It includes people of all races. So lots of people of different races were being harmed by this practice of foreign ownership. But nonetheless, it was just to talk about it was regarded as racist, and until it just became such a severe problem that political correctness just had to take a back seat, and there was a public inquiry into it, and that has led to several restrictions against foreign ownership now. Thank God, finally, after the horse left the barn, kind of thing. But okay, that's just one side of the coin. That's not the only factor that would be contributing to this huge surge in real estate prices in Canada. The other part is interest rates. And who brought the interest rates down to zero? Mark Carney as Prime Minister. So not as Prime Minister, as Governor of the Bank of Canada, which is it's an unelected position. And so he really has blood on his hands. I'm going to say it that way. It's quite a strong metaphor, but the housing crisis kills people. So it's seriously harmed this country and has harmed many Canadians. And Mark Carney is a big contributor to that crisis with his zero interest rate policy as the former Governor of the Bank of Canada. And then, of course, he left Canada and went off to Britain, where I believe he was involved with their central bank, reducing interest rates to zero and bringing about a huge housing crisis, real estate bubble over in the United Kingdom. And before being sworn in as Prime Minister of Canada yesterday, Mark Carney had to renounce his British citizenship, and he also had Irish citizenship. You can't be a citizen of a foreign country and be Prime Minister of Canada. So he had to renounce both of those citizenships that he held. Again, that's just another point, I think, on him that serves to delegitimize him, make him not a legitimate person occupying the position of Prime Minister. He hadn't been very committed to Canada for many years leading up to this. Now all of a sudden he's waving the Canadian flag and renouncing his citizenship with all these other countries. I think it's just so disgusting. It's so disgusting that this weasel, this banker, this enabler of the real estate housing crisis of Canada has weaseled his way in through the back door as Prime Minister of Canada. It's disgusting. As terrible as Trudeau was elected Prime Minister 3 times. The other thing is Mark Carney is known to be a very strong adherent to the World Economic Forum Agenda 2030 plans, which is, environmentalism to the extreme, to the detriment of human beings, and also raising the costs of food and diminishing the standard of living of ordinary people. That is what that agenda stands for, and he is a very strong adherent to it. And so is Trudeau. Trudeau is a very strong adherent to that agenda as well. But at least with Trudeau, he's an idiot, right? He's a total idiot. He's got a pretty face, but he's an idiot. And but if I'm going to have a a leader of my country who is committed to an evil agenda like that of the World Economic Forum, I would rather that leader be an idiot buffoon like Trudeau than to be a smart guy like Mark Carney. So he is smart, evil, not good intentions, destructive to Canada, but he's smart about it. So that is scary. That is actually very scary. The damage that he will be able to inflict on this country. I can only hope and pray that Canadians are going to see this and are going to reject it totally, and that we're going to have to deliver a very strong victory to the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre, who will be running for Prime Minister under the Conservative banner in this upcoming election. I just am repulsed at the idea of this banker being Prime Minister of Canada. So I mean, it's terrible that he hasn't even faced election. I mean, at least if he faces an election and passes that, he would have some degree of political legitimacy. Still would be a very scary Prime Minister, though, from my perspective. But at least he would have that. So let's hope that he gets defeated and that the Conservatives win. This is one. I've never voted Conservative in my life. This is one election. I haven't even voted in the last several elections. I'm going to be voting in this election. It's very important. It's very important to vote in this election, and I'm going to be voting for the Conservatives for the first time in my life. Never mind the PPC. They have served an important role, but in terms of holding office, the only party that is a contender to actually have their leader be the Prime Minister, the only other party besides the Liberal Party of Canada, is the Conservative Party. Okay? We've never had a Prime Minister in Canada that belongs to any other party besides those two, Liberal or Conservative. All the other parties are minor parties that serve in opposition roles. And those are important roles, yes. But, for this coming election, I think the stakes are so high that it's going to be so important to vote for a Conservative and Pierre Poilievre. And, I mean, Pierre Poilievre is almost like the opposite of Mark Carney. If Mark Carney has no political history, no history of facing elections, Pierre Poilievre has been in politics since I've been following politics as a teenager. So he's been elected countless times as an MP, and so I mean, just right there, he's got way more legitimacy than Carney, and I happen to like a lot of the things that he says. I really do, and to his credit, he did not. I mean, there was this. What was going on with that? During the BC election that we had a few months back, there was a great deal of kerfuffle going on in Canada about wanting to lock drug users up against their will, force them into treatment against their will. In a country where people can't even get treatment from doctors for routine, regular ailments, who want treatment. But drug addicts would be rushed to the top of the list in the medical system, and even if they don't want to be, and forced into treatment. Wow. I mean, never mind, the civil rights of the drug users. I mean, think about the implications for the health system of doing that. But every politician was wanting to take that policy, even ones who David Eby of BC, Premier of BC, who built his career on advocating for the rights of drug users and brought in policy of drug decriminalization to the province of BC, but quickly turned around on that when it became politically unpopular, and was also wanting to join this pack calling for drug users to be involuntarily locked up. And to his credit, Pierre Poilievre said that he did not support that policy for adults. It's another matter entirely when you're talking about children, underage minors. Yeah, I agree. So he did support that for kids. All right. I may be persuaded to support something like that for kids too. I mean, I definitely think it's a different situation when you're talking about underage. But in terms of adults, I mean, he did respect their human rights and said that that would be inappropriate. I mean, never mind logistically, how are we going to do this? We don't have the medical staff in Canada to treat the current the way things are being done, let alone this massive expansion of drug treatment. Where would the medical staff come from? And how much longer would Canadians have to wait for treatment for every other type of ailment, which they're already waiting so long for? Like, it just boggles the mind logistically how that would work in a country that has such a severe shortage of medical professionals like Canada. But anyways, so just to Pierre Poilievre's credit, he did not jump on that bandwagon of total lunacy when it was popular to do so, especially popular among conservatives. So I did respect him for that, for sure. So yeah, the memes write themselves, right? Never trust a Carney. So this is the one who's this is the one who is the Prime Minister of Canada right now, who's never run for election, but weaseled his way in through the back door. Mark Carney, former governor who gave Canada its housing crisis. Of course, his name Carney, spelled Carney. Well, that is a word. I think it would be spelled differently here, but it sounds the same. That's like carnival. Like a carney is somebody who comes from the carnival, like a carnival barker. Okay, or somebody in a circus act, in a carnival act. So, those people are known. Maybe it's a stereotype, maybe it's not, maybe it's an unfair stereotype, I don't know. Or maybe it is fair, I don't know. But they are known to be tricksters, carnival performers. They're like, it's a magic act that they're performing, and that of course involves a certain amount of deception and trickery. And so, I mean, how fitting that would be the last name of this weasel banker who's found himself as Prime Minister of Canada through the back door, that he would have the last name of Carney, which is a name, like I'm explaining, from a carnival act, which involves the amount of deception. So, never trust a Carney is an expression. And I certainly wouldn't trust this Carney. I'd be more likely to trust an actual Carney who is from a carnival act, as opposed to this fucking Carney who's from the Bank of Canada, which I suppose is itself its own form of a carnival act. I mean, the memes write themselves. This election coming up is going to be a meme maker's dream. And the ads are going to be hilarious because there's so much you can do with that, right? Never trust a Carney. And I've got this other image on here as well, which is Carneys. Do you really want to go on this merry-go-round? Do you really want to, Canada? I don't think so. And nobody says they want to be a Carney when they grow up. Certainly not that kind. It's just disgusting. Do I want to talk about something else? No. I think I'm going to leave it there. There are other things I could be talking about, but this is so important. I think it deserves to not have the message confused by me bringing in other topics. So if I may come on and do a live stream about some other political or current events later on, or I may not. But I'm just going to leave it at that right now. It's certainly, we're in for an interesting period of politics in Canada this year. Peace out, y'all.